Yeah, originally, yeah. There was, obviously, I was in a coma, but they warned my parents and obviously Sam that we may have to amputate his leg, and they were like, and I've not just sports been my whole life. Just before the accident, I'd been selected to be part of the Great Britain team to fly out to the World Championships in Germany in kickboxing. So I did Muay Thai, I did all of them, but what I was really good at was kickboxing. So obviously that got taken away from me. And I never got that opportunity. But what they did say was the only reason why I kept my leg is because my blood supply was still that good. And even though the femoral artery had gone and it was only being hung on by a few strands of muscle and veins, those veins were that strong that it was still keeping the lower part of my leg from below. Well, it was just above my knee, alive.
Yeah. So fitness probably played a part in that then, I'd imagine, because which I have heard a lot of times in terms of people being in different situations, but that is a lucky thing that you were in good shape. I mean, that's all I'd say, because a few more of those McDonald's on the American base or whatever, and you wouldn't be. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't be in.
I don't do. Don't swear at me.
But no, it's just so okay. So then, obviously, recovery now is another thing, because recovering from something like that. Well, actually, I'm actually going to skip back a little bit. I mean, one other thing is, obviously you were in a coma, you were in this induced coma and everything. But when you wake up from a coma, or whatever, I mean, when you first sort of came round and everything like that, I mean, what is that like? Because I mean, obviously you wake up, 7-8 days of your life are gone. The last thing you remember will be being by the side of the road, or actually being going into the helicopter and all that. So I mean, what went through your mind and what happened when you first woke up and everything?
Not a lot, really, and it's not like the movies and what you see on TV where you open your eyes and everyone's going, you say, "Oh, what's going on?" The first thing they tried to bring me round on day 6 or 7. I get confused, but apparently I was in too much pain. Obviously, I don't remember anything. And then when I was brought round properly, the only real thing I started to remember was being held down. Because I've been on a life support machine for 7 days, so I'm intubated, so I've got a tube that gets fed into my lungs, so they're inflating and deflating my lungs, give me oxygen. Because my injuries were that horrific, I had to be placed in induced coma because my body wouldn't be able to tolerate the pain. So the first natural thing you do is when you come round is want to remove this object that's in your mouth, and obviously I didn't know I'd been in an accident when I came round. So they slowly remove so I'm trying to try and grab the obstruction and rip it out. But if I was to do that, I'd have ripped my lungs out and I'd died. So they hold you down, and then I just remember them slowly removing it, and then them saying, "Okay, they breathe," and I couldn't. It felt like an eternity because obviously this machine had been doing it for 7-8 days, and then eventually I took this big breath. I don't remember too much else from then on. My mum said, and Sam said that I was being sick constantly, and they were just holding these, those paper bowls that you get in hospital, and I was just being constantly sick. But I don't really remember anything else after that. It was just, and obviously I had to be then transferred on awakening. I had to be transferred to Wiston Hospital in Liverpool because one of the injuries, obviously my leg was hanging off by a few strands and veins, and so I had in the operation I had 6 external pins drilled through my femur and my lower legs because it would just be wobbling around, so it had to be fixed straight and bandaged up because I completely degloved it, so there's no skin on it whatsoever. I lost 3/4 of my calf through debridement. So debridement is when in surgery they were pulling all the gravel, taking it all out, and they had to remove a lot of my car. And I think half of it had just been destroyed through the weight of the tyre on the tarmac. And I was wearing really expensive leathers as well. So if I wasn't wearing decent equipment, I probably wouldn't be here now. So I had all that going on. So I had to go to Wiston to get skin grafting. But I'd also completely shattered my right leg and I broke my kneecap into 6 places, your patella. So that had to be X-wired, so like a circle of wire with it as an X through it, like wire, which along a lot later on snapped, and I had to be rushed in to get that removed, but that's a story in itself. So I had to be transferred to Wiston. Unfortunately, I contracted morphine psychosis. So you shouldn't be able to contract morphine psychosis. I basically was given a peak, because the amount of pain I was in. I was drugged up on all sorts, so not that I knew I was in pain. and they give you a PCA, so a patient-controlled analgesia. So basically, when you're in pain, you hit it 3 times, and it locks out, so you can't overdose on it. What was happening to me was when I was coming round from sleep, I was kind of thinking I was in surgery because of all the lights. So I was hitting it 3 times, pass out. And this happened all night to the point where I contracted morphine psychosis, which is horrific. So morphine psychosis is paranoia, hallucinations as real as I am talking to you. Yeah. The listeners or the viewers, everything you see around you is what the hallucination is. It is real. I didn't know I was in hospital. I didn't know what the extent of my injuries. I had no clue what was going on. And the first real thing was day 1 when I was at Wiston. There was 2 nurses at the end of my bed. I'm on a large ward in Wiston, great hospital. And they were probably talking about the ward round, but I physically saw them say, he shouldn't be in here. He said he was out in Wales on a motorbike. He's wasting a bed. He's done this to himself. I hate people like this. And the other one goes, well, what can we do? And she goes, let's poison his food and get rid of him. So I completely withdrew in myself. Didn't want to speak to anyone, and I wasn't really eating because of this, because I was suffering this extreme paranoia. Now, they were probably just talking about the ward round or something, but that's what I saw. There were other ones as well. There was someone had the telly on, and it was to do with a terrorist attack, and my mum had just left, and then suddenly there was alarms going off in the hospital, and I was like, I physically saw it, and then I saw my mum be dragged in by a masked gunman to the foot of my bed, and then looks at me, and then executed in front of me, and like blood sprayed up on me, and I screamed, and then one of the nurses come in, and there was no one there. There was a funnier one, where the guy opposite me was sat there, and his wife come in, and she was carrying a pizza, and he sat down a big pizza, and he put it there, and I went, oh, that smells amazing, mate. And he went, oh, yeah. I went, what is it? And he goes, oh, it's ham and pineapple. And I said, oh, Hawaiian. And he went, yeah. I says, people don't like pineapple on pizza. I don't mind it. Do you? And he goes, well, I've got it, haven't I? He goes, do you want some? I said, no, I'm all right. Apparently his wife wasn't there. There was no pizza. He was just sat there in the bed going, what? Looking around him. So that was one of the funny ones. But the final, there was loads of others as well. But the final straw come when I was rocking, my wife, my girlfriend at the time, and my mum turned up to visit us as they did every single day. And I was rocking in the bed, and I said, why do you visit me every day? And they're saying, what do you mean? I said, it must cost you a fortune. Are you staying in a hotel? And they're like, no, we live on the, it's just because where we live is on the Wirral in Liverpool. And that's Western, and there's, all it is the Mersey Tunnel. It's like 20 minutes away. Yeah. And they said, no, what do you mean, the tunnel? I said, there isn't a tunnel to Canada. I thought I was in a mental institute in Canada. I'd lost my mind, and I was in a padded cell. So obviously concerns were raised then for my mind, my mental health. And the on-call doctor came and basically said, and I just got this moment of clarity, and I said, take me off everything. And he said, we can't. And like my family around, he said, we can't. You'll be in too much pain. And I just remember saying, I'd rather be in pain than stuck in this world that I don't know what's real and what's not. I don't even know where I am. And he's like, you're in hospital. I said, no, I'm not. I'm in a mental institute. And he's like, so obviously they took me off my meds. It took about 2 to 3 days to get out my system. And I just remember waking up one morning, and like the way I describe it is the fog had lifted in my brain. And I just remember looking around thinking, well, I'm in hospital. And then looking down to my sheets. So I've got 6 external pet pins. So my sheets now like a dome over me. I've got no skin, so it's constantly bleeding. But you know, it is bandaged up quite tightly, but it still oozes. So I had blood on my sheets. I had these metal pins stuck in. My right leg was in a cast, and I'd gone from 12.5 stone, so 78 kilograms, 79 kilograms was what my fighting weight was. I was down to 7 stone. I'd completely wasted away. This was like probably 2 to 3 weeks at that point. And then one of the nurses come in, and the one who kind of I had seen say to me, or say, we're going to poison you. And she went, oh, God, you look better today. And I said, oh, yeah. And then I told her, and she goes, as if we'd poison you. I can't believe you thought that. And I said, well, that's what I saw. She goes, oh, you've been great. You've not even bothered us. It's because I was terrified. They were going to poison me. Oh. So that realization of suddenly, and it's still a bit foggy. You know, my brain still wasn't, because I was still on, you know, it takes a while for all these drugs to get out of your system. And I just remember just breaking down and then trying to phone Sam. So they gave me my brick of a phone. I couldn't even remember the pin number to get into my phone to unlock it. Couldn't remember anything. So I think they managed to get a hold of my mum, and I spoke to Sam, and yeah, and then it was like, right, we've got to deal with this.
It's amazing. I mean, you know, there's so many things there that, I mean, you started it off by saying it's not like on TV, and obviously I didn't expect it to be, but I tell you what, that is even more like, particularly with the hallucinations, because that's just, it's on another level of, you know, how you cope with that. But and obviously when you come off the drugs and things, they just went away, these sort of visions, and
yes, well, it took a few days.
yeah.
And
Okay.
when I woke up one morning, I just knew I felt different. Like that, as I say, I refer to it, the fog had lifted in my brain.
Yeah. It makes sense. It's just profound hearing it like that, you know. Okay, so obviously recovery from this. Now, one of the things that's really cool for people watching or listening to this is that obviously you were back in work, you know, back with the police in I believe it was 18 months was when I was researching this. Yeah, so one of the things that interests me about that is obviously the recovery. Obviously, you came off all the drugs. You must have been in phenomenal pain, I would imagine. Now, what was your recovery like in terms of, you know, in terms of the pain, in terms of using your legs, in terms of, you know, support network? Any aspect that you're interested in sort of mentioning, really? I don't mind. Again, it's sort of an open question, but the recovery must have been on another level. It must have been arduous. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I had to go through several operations, skin grafting on my leg first before they could remove those pins. I got the cast taken off on my right leg about 4 or 5 weeks into it, so that was a relief just getting that off, because it just itched like anything. I hated it. I went down for surgery, and so I'll tell stories that I've not told really. I remember getting ready to go down for surgery, and I was obviously nil by mouth. So I was nil by mouth on the Monday, all day, getting ready to go down for surgery. Got to 11:30, I was cancelled, because a major, you know, it happens. Someone's life-threatening comes in, they had to take it up. So I had half an hour to eat, but because I was still a bit woozy and stuff, and off the drugs had been taken, I'd had like a yogurt and something. Next day, nil by mouth. Same thing happened again, 11:30. A yogurt, you know, a piece of bread, a piece of toast. This went on for 4 days straight. So then I was losing more weight, I was becoming more weak. They then put me on these. They said, you need to drink these, else you can't have surgery. And they're like Ensure or something, or it's like a drink that's vile, but full of like, you know, protein, vitamins, minerals, carbohydrates, really high calorific things. And it just kept happening. And the nurse, I just remember one morning, the doctor come around in the morning, he said, right, you're third on the list today. And the sister on the ward just said to him, he's going down to surgery today. He said, she goes, I'm not having it. He's struggling to cope at the moment. He's wasting away. Soon, he's not going to be able to go down for surgery. You're going to tell him he's too weak. And like, she proper had a go at him. And then he went off. And I just remember her turning to me and going, they think they run the place. It's us. Lo and behold, an hour later, I went down for surgery and had the first one. So it was skin grafting. So what they do is I've got no feeling where my skin grafting is, got no pain. I've never had any pain there anyway, even in hospital. They take a slice of skin, or quite a lot of skin, but a very fine slice off a donor site. So mine was my upper right, upper left, so the same leg, but the upper left of it, just either side of where the pins were, that ran central down my femur. And what they do is they then put that through a mangle, and then they lay it on the affected site, and then they staple it with a staple gun, just staples, ding, 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 ding. So at one point I had like hundreds of staples in my leg. And then I came back up. I then went for surgery, you know, several other times, but each time I was down, I didn't have to go that nil by a mouth. The pain from the donor site was excruciating, like horrific. The way I describe it is being, if you were to touch it, because all your nerve endings are on show, that's how fine the slice is. So you touch it, it's like being stung by 1,000 scorpions, or acid being tipped on it, or it was on fire. Bearing in mind, I can't move, I can't, you know, I'm literally prone, and I have been lying on my back. I could sit up slightly for 4 or 5 weeks. So a very degrading part of my life, I've not talked about this, is and I will get back to me to put me on about the pain on my leg. It'll roll into it actually. Because I was the youngest on the ward, and I was in a ward that was full of quite old people. All the nurses would sit on my bed or come and talk to me when they had time, and and it was nice because it was a good network. It kept my mind active instead of me just sat on my own when visiting time wasn't on. But the flip side to that was I'd then need the toilet, like a number 2, and I'd have to go, I need the toilet. So they'd go and get a bedpan. They'd roll me over to put it in. As they roll me over, all my nerve endings are now touching the bed. So I'm screaming in pain, tears coming down. They then put me back on. I eventually go because the amount of medication I was on, it was unreal. They then have to come and then wipe my bum for me because I was so weak. Then roll me back over. It was just the most degrading time in my life. And like the lads, my mates would come and visit us and say, "Oh, she's all right. Getting a bed bath, are you?" I said, "Mate, bed baths aren't good. It's horrific. It's degrading. It's just disgusting. It's a horrible time." But yeah, every time I got rolled over or moved, I'd be screaming in pain because of the nerve endings, and my donor site was large. Obviously, it had to fill the whole lower part of my leg. It was just excruciating. And then they come and give you a thing called paraffin, and you have to rub paraffin into it. So you're in pain and you're rubbing it in, but then it forms, it's a scab. It was weird, and eventually the scabs come off. But that was horrific, just dealing with that left leg. Once they'd all taken, it was then, right, you need to learn how to walk again. And people may think, well, that's easy. The neural pathway from my brain to my leg wasn't working anymore. This is about 2.5 months, sat in the same bed, looking at the same way, having not moved from that bed, lying down straight, not using any of my body. My mum brought me some weights in, like little dumbbell weights. So I'd be sat there doing my arms, just trying to keep some sort of muscle mass on me. Oh yeah, just taking me back to it now, because I've not mentioned a lot of this. Just by doing this open conversation, it's triggering different things, which is quite, it's a credit to your style, to be honest.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it was degrading. So once I got past that bit, I had to learn how to walk again. And as I said, that neural pathway, and it was explained to me, and it made sense. It's like a motorway crash. So you have a massive crash on a motorway, and everything gets diverted. So I've had this massive impact, and everything from my brain to my leg has been diverted, and slowly it returns. And the first thing I had to do, because my leg was straight with the pins in, was just pick my leg up off the floor and put it down. Sounds easy. Couldn't do it. Couldn't for the life of me do it. I just remember one night, because I'm that sort of person. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. I was just trying all the time, and eventually I managed to, that connection just fired, and I picked it up. And I just remember screaming in the middle of the night, "Get in!" Dead loud, and obviously the nurses run in. I wake the ward up. They said, "You all right?" I said, "I'll just pick my leg up." And they were like, "Okay," and I went off. But that meant the physios were coming down to me, and I said, "Listen, I've done that." And they said, "Right, let's set you up and try and get you walking." Because the plan was I'd have to be able to walk with it, because at that point I was keeping my leg, but I was told you'll always have to walk with a walking frame and aid, a Zimmer frame, because there's not much chance of you ever using it again, which I refused to kind of accept at that point. So they sat me up, and I remember coming around and thinking, I'm being embarrassed because I thought I'd fallen asleep on the physio's on her shoulder. Basically, my blood pressure was that poor that I passed out every time I sat up. So it took a week for me just to get to the end of the bed without passing out. Building up that tolerance, building up our blood pressure. I was getting transfusions in hospital every other couple of days anyway, because because it had been leaking, constantly leaking with blood. Eventually, I got to the end of the bed, legs down, and I started to walk up and down the corridor, a couple of paces at first. And eventually I was up and down the corridor with them next to me on this Zimmer frame. So then what you've got to do is you've got to be able to do stairs. Now I lived, as I said a year ago, we're in a new flat, we're in the top floor, the penthouse one. It's not a penthouse that was amazing, trust me. But there was stairs, there was no elevators, you had to get to these stairs. So I had to be able to do stairs with a walking stick. Eventually I did that, so I thought, great, I'm now going to get transferred to Arrow Park Hospital, which is on the Wirral, which is local to me. They're going to take the pins out. They're going to sort my leg out. They're going to reattach the ligaments, the tendons that had snapped completely because there was nothing there at all. I'm going to crack on. Let's do it. Couldn't have been further from the truth. I was transferred to Arrow Park Hospital, where I then had the pins taken out. Now, I thought I'd go down for surgery to have the pins removed because 2 of my sites were infected. You could see it. They were going in, and there was green around the site. So I thought I was going to, go down. So my surgeon from, I don't know where it was from. I'm saying Western. It could have been from Glenclwyd Hospital. I don't know. Came to remove them. Because it was at the bedside on the ward. But because it was at the bedside on the ward, everyone wanted to watch. You had all the nurses, all the healthcare assistants, everyone just crowded round the bay. And I was sat there looking at them, going, oh no. And the surgeon came up and he had his second in command, his junior, with him. And he said, you ready for this? And I was just looking around going, yeah. So I grabbed this pillow. I said, do I need this? He goes, you shouldn't do. So I had this pillow. And the junior doctor or the surgeon, whatever he was, his second in command, started to crunch, started to undo it. It was this almighty crunch and the pain was horrific. I just remember putting the pillow over my head, biting into it and screaming, and tears were rolling down, and I took it off my face. And the main surgeon was like, have you had any painkillers? I said, no. And he just flipped out completely. So he ordered someone to go and get some painkillers, but I couldn't have morphine because of the psychosis. So I was given some sort of drug, don't know what it was, but it was great because I was completely off my head then. And I was just lying there, and he said, right, let's go again. He said, no, I'm going to do it. He's been through enough. The junior doctor had actually been tightening the screw back into my bone instead of, and what I usually say at my talks is, do they not teach lefty loosey, righty tighty in medical school? You know what I mean? That natural saying, isn't it? Righty, honestly. Yeah. So they were removed. They were all removed by him. The infection I was treated with antibiotics for the infection. And then I was taken down to, it happened twice actually, for further operation. It's called a manipulation whilst under anaesthetic. So you get taken down, and what they do is they put a nerve blocker into your groin, even though you're asleep, complete muscle reaction. And basically what they do is they hoist your leg up and they just crank it, and they put as much pressure as they can, because what happens is scar tissue grows into the joint slightly, and they need to break that and go, because scar tissue is like stretching leather. I remember coming round and I knew it hadn't worked. And I started tears going down my eye, and the nurse going, what's up? I said, it hasn't worked, has it? And she goes, no. After the second one, the same thing happened. And Dr. Strahmer, brilliant doctor, just come up to me and said, there's no more we can do. He said, while you were in surgery, if we had put an ounce more pressure on your leg, you'd have snapped your femur completely. Because my leg had been stationary for 3-4 months now, that scar tissue had gone and solidified in that joint. And as I said, it's like stretching scar tissue. So I was sent away, and I did 4 or 5 months of rehab and physio at Clatterbridge, where I only got to 30-degree flexion. So my leg would only move just about that. And they gave up on me. I paid to go and see an orthopedic specialist was it Wigan or somewhere? I can't remember the name of it. I can't remember the name of the guy. I paid, and he was a top orthopedic surgeon. And his words were to me, you need to give up. He said, you're not going to get any more movement in your leg. He said, if you want the best, because what I was saying is, I've got a kid on the way. I don't want to be a dad who's like lame and can't run in the park with his kids, or be limited. And I said, sport's been my whole life. I want to get back to. He said, you've got no chance. He said, you haven't. He said, your best chance for you to be involved and run is to amputate your leg below the knee to give you the best chance of prosthetic. Or, I still don't understand why you would do this, is you would have a steel rod infused straight through it to lock it straight. Me being me, I refused. I just come out, and I just remember stood there on the step just in tears, and Sam's hugging me, and I'm like, I can't, what do I do? I don't know what to do. I'm not having my leg amputated. I chose to go back to work within 8 months. So I was on light duties. So I wasn't out in the field because I couldn't walk properly anyway. I only had 30-degree. And I embarked on 18 months probably in total of brutal my own physio. So I'd be sitting on chairs like the ones you find, just a normal chair. I'd lay it on the floor. I'd put my back and my bum against it. I'd have my leg, to say that's the chair. I'd have my leg up like that, and I'd get Sam to load weights, ankle weights on hooks with weight, and gradually increase that weight. So I'd sit there for like 45 minutes, an hour, and the pain was unreal. So I'd just sit there for an hour in pain, just like that, tears just streaming down. And then I go, right, I'm done. She'd take it off. And then I couldn't put any weight through my leg because it was that painful. It was locked. Eventually I got it going. I'd do stuff like I'd tie a belt strap in it and have the door, and I'd be slamming the door and working my knee, and just real like Rocky stuff that you'd see in film, stuff you shouldn't be doing. Proper just this went on for, I say, a good 12 months, to the point where I got 95-degree movement in my leg. So I could then walk, I could jog, I could go back to stuff I was passionate about, snowboarding, climbing, surfing, doing, running. I then started back, I was back on patrol within 18 months, which was unheard of. I got an award for that, for commitment and determination, a big prestige, a gala award, a big event, and I was given it. And yeah, I managed to turn the life back around and get myself back on my feet. And I always say, if I had his details, that guy the doctor who said you need to just give up and amputate your leg, I'd love to send him all the stuff I've done since.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I hope he sees. I hope he sees some of it, because it's one of those things where, being written off like that, I've heard so many accounts of that from medical people, and it's just how they can put someone through that. I don't know, and I appreciate they do see it. They see a lot of people that die and don't make it, and okay, maybe that sort of wears them down. But still, I mean, to say that to somebody, it's just, I think it's like an amoral sort of thing to do psychologically to someone. But so hopefully they'll they'll see this, or they'll see one of your other ones, or they'll turn up at one of your talks. Yeah, fingers crossed. But just incredible. It's just the perseverance, and even the fact that you were doing it yourself, and that aspect of the Rocky stuff is it's amazing. It's the hospital stuff. It sounds 50-50. I don't know what it says about our NHS on some levels. On other levels, it sounds like there were some lovely people in there. So
I couldn't fault them. I'd never slag them off. They've saved my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were brilliant in there. And you appreciate when you're in there for a period how much work they do. It's just
they do.
Thing happens. It was in our park.
People don't realise. Yeah, people don't
realise. At one point when I got there, I don't think they realised how bad my injury was. And there was this nurse. I won't say anything else about her. And she went, "Can you sit on that chair?" And it was a low chair, and I said, "I can't bend my knee. I can't." There was no handles to grip on. I said, "I can't. I physically can't." And she goes, "You can." I said, "I can't. I can't bend my knee at all." And I still at this point I still had the pins in, and she just pushed me, and I fell over, hit the table, and ended up on the floor shaking. And I always remember, ingrained in my mind, was a shouting. You saw that he fell over, didn't he? Like panicked like anything. So then they were on the floor, and they said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Just get her away from me. Just get her away from me." And then I ended up getting put back in bed. But yeah, so good experiences and some bad ones.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Because obviously the medical care into the surgery and everything sounds great, but some of the others with the pins and with stuff like that, I was just like, bloody hell, it's. So all right. So moving on from that, now there's a few things here, because obviously you were back in, obviously in work, more sort of full time within 18 months. You were also, as far as I know, you sort of got you got back into the different sports. I read about rugby, that you were back involved in that. Obviously, you mentioned snowboarding and all these things. That in itself is incredible. Now, two things here, but starting with the first one, is around this time you were basically selected. You were basically headhunted for this tactical squad, this organised time. I'm just making sure I get my timescales right on this.
Yeah.
So that was quite soon after everything that had happened. Now, what happened with that? Because you were sort of, you were involved in this. It was very high level. I mean, obviously, this is the type of thing taking down, heavy hitters in terms of organised crime. So, let's talk a little bit about that, because not only were you sort of back very soon, and obviously I know there were steps to it, which you've illustrated, but you were back. But then quite soon afterwards, you were back in sort of a high level, targeting these drugs rings and targeting these different things. So let's talk a little bit about that side of it, in terms of one thing I'm interested in is what people said and what people thought when you actually got back in there, because I can imagine people were just blown away, like you never thought we'd see him again, or that type of thing. But in your own words, Dave, I mean, what was your experience like with that side of things?
The best time was when the very first day back on parade with I was on a block, a block. So back then there was about 14 of us on this block, and as I said before, it was a response block, as they called it back then. And it was you're dealing with the 999 calls, the urgent calls. I was one of the first ones in their training to have actually been given a driving course due to the reputation I had. And I always remember that first day getting back on there. And Pete Edwards, a guy, had just come to me. Or I always remember he was going on leave before I went before the accident, and he says, I don't want to read about you in the paper about you dying while I'm away. And on parade, I just went, I didn't die, but it took me longer to get back here. And he laughed and everything. But yeah, everyone was just saying it's unbelievable, because obviously they'd heard that I was likely to prove. There'd been emails gone around the force. You know, everyone had been told. I had a couple of real close friends in there, and they told me about how they came on parade and said, listen, Dave's been in an accident and we don't think he's going to make it. So then to then be back on parade and seeing everyone, yeah, everyone was made up for me, and, you know, and were glad to see me. So then I spent about another year on that block, and I was just getting some really good high profile arrests and putting away some real top criminals. Burglary was what I was targeting, especially. And then I got asked if I'd join the tactical unit. So this unit, it was the first one of its kind within Merseyside. And it was, before the accident, I wanted to go in the ARVs. After the accident, I don't know what happened. I just decided I didn't want to do that anymore. And I was gearing up to go into the dog section. Yeah. But when this opportunity came, because I'd done attachments, I'd worked with them, and I was kind of virtually going that, you know, in the door. But when this opportunity come, I thought, this is why I joined, to be doing jobs with these guys. Yeah. So went into there, and there was two sections. There was ones that dealt with like recall to prisons and warrants, people who were wanted on warrants. You go knock on doors. And then there was the other unit, which I was desperate to get into, which was targeting your top level criminals. I was put in that unit, and it was such a scream. The stories I could tell you, we'd be here for hours. But I built quite a decent reputation within that tactical unit as well, from some of the jobs and how we targeted them. We were that successful that one day we actually drove the price up of drugs on the Wirral. And the way we know it is because you end up with a relationship with the drug users on the streets. You know, sometimes you do feel quite sorry for them, because the way that they're tricked into becoming drug users, and then once they've got them, they're used to deals. So you do get a bit. Just remember pulling one lad over. I think his name was Jonesy, who we'd arrested that many times. He was the worst criminal ever, and he just went, "Hey, Bolton, you dickhead!" And I went, "What?" And he went, "It's your fault." And I said, "What do you mean?" So you're on your unit. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" So he came over. He said, "I have to pay £20 a bag now of Lemo and Brown." So what it is Lemo is crack cocaine and Brown is heroin, and it's usually £10 a bag. He's like, "It's 20 quid each now." What happened is we put that many dealers. Unfortunately, a lot of them do come through the tunnel from Liverpool. We put that many of them away with the tactics we were using, with the plain clothes, that they had to pay their dealers to come over more. So they were passing it on to their customers. It's just unreal. But, so many diverse jobs, like sitting in the back of a van. So they loved my team, our team, the National Crime Agency. So there was SOCA, so Serious Organised Crime Agency. It's our version of the FBI, really. So I ended up being involved in 5 jobs with them, because we got the job done, if you know what I mean. It was like, so like on the live lane of the motorway, I was fighting with some lad on the live lane in an operation with them. They wanted to get rid of this guy. And we brought the whole, you wouldn't get away with it now. We brought the whole of the motorway to a standstill with plain cars at front. What had happened is it was an organised plan that a marked vehicle, traffic car, would come behind, flash the lights on. We'd all stop, thinking it was, and that's what they thought. The criminals said in an interview, they thought that we were all stopping for the police car. He got out as we got. Okay, he punched the police officer, headbutted him, and ran towards me. And as he ran towards me, I just grabbed hold of him and said police, and then we ended up fighting on the live lane of the motorway. Obviously, I won. He's handcuffed. I just remember looking up, and there were thousands of people, hundreds out the car. Oh my God, that was the whole of their units. They had people in running gear, dressed as binmen. There's about 60 people for one person to follow. It was unreal. We've taken out a lorry on the M56, carrying 40 kilograms of heroin. It's just the jobs so diverse. What I was involved with, I was search trained. I was involved in planning searches and being community engagement for a high-profile murder of a girl on one of the beauty spots. I won't go into it because it was sickening what happened to her. So so diverse for the jobs I was dealing with. We implemented an operation because at Christmas there's a spike in crime all the time. And where we were on the Wirral, off licenses were being armed robberies and guns, knives all the time. So we put a plan in place, and our team came across one in progress. So we all shipped up. They ran out. and we detained a couple of them. One got away, and we eventually went on to detain them. So these were the jobs we were dealing with. We were using trackers, equipment. So I was in charge of tracking equipment, so we could put like tracking equipment in stuff, put it out like a sat nav in an area with high crime, or with a car full of cameras. They'd smash the window, take the sat nav, take it home. We just switch the device on and go and knock on their house and arrest them. So a lot of the jobs, some of them, yeah, it was brilliant. I loved it. Absolutely loved it in that time.
Extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary. Now, obviously, another thing that obviously, we need to get to here is becoming world champion, because obviously, I believe during this time that happened as well.
Yeah.
I know you had other regional titles as well, but becoming world champion was something, because one of the things that's amazing is obviously from being told, you'll never walk again, you're going to have to lose your leg, and all these things. The pain that you described of the nerves, and just so many things, and obviously to win that. Now, I know a little bit about it. I know it was in Italy. I've looked up a little bit. I don't know a lot, so I'd like to sort of touch on that. But in terms of how you felt, I mean, winning a world title. I mean, I've over the time I've asked many world champions, how it feels to win a world title, and I've heard different descriptions, but never under circumstances like this. So I'd like to sort of talk about that side of it in terms of that achievement, because that is an extraordinary achievement in itself. So again, Dave, I mean, it's not one question, but in your own words, winning the world title, because it must have been, obviously you must have built your training back up during your recovery. Obviously you're fitting this.
Let me talk about that a little bit first. And
then absolutely, yeah.
To be continued. Everyone, please keep an eye out for the next episode of Dave Bolton's story, which can be seen on a Simply Inspired YouTube channel. Thank you very much for watching, and hope you enjoy the next episode. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.